We are born free.
And we will die free.
The time in between, though,
That's complicated.
In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Oderman.
Hey everybody, welcome to a special Sunday night live edition of Finding Freedom here on the Lions of Liberty Network. If you're watching this live, thanks for tuning in. We are streaming live to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. So wherever you're watching from, thanks for watching. And if you want to, if you're listening, catching the replay, and if you do want to watch live, be sure on YouTube especially to hit that little bell so you get a notification, because we are pretty shadow banned on YouTube. And same thing on Rumble. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so you get notified every time that we go live or release a new video. So today's episode, I'll introduce my guest in a minute. My guest is Bruce Magee, good friend of mine. And we had a plan to talk about a lot of different things. Want to talk about Bitcoin and homesteading and maybe a little bit of health and wellness. And then today, as I was sitting there watching football, I glanced at Twitter and another assassination attempt at President Donald Trump. So we're going to kick things off with that. But before we get started talking about that, let's bring Bruce on the show. Bruce Magee, like I said, friend of mine. I think 3 or 4 years we've, known each other. I've been on his podcast several times. Previously, he hosted the Weathered Soul podcast, which I was a big fan of. That's spun off into a new, even more exciting podcast with more contributors called the Weathered Report. Like I said, Bruce is a Bitcoin advocate. He's homesteading advocate as well, or he actually does homesteading. So Bruce, welcome to Finding Freedom, man.
Well, thank you, John. I really appreciate being on Finding Freedom. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. So basically, it's been about 4 years, almost, pretty much to the month or day or whatever you want to say. But we started conversing about 4 years ago, and it's been a great ride.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, you trusted me with your health and some advice on some supplements, and from there, it's been nothing but good things. So
no regrets at all. But I was just as shocked as the news came out today. Wasn't surprised at all. But I mean, if we really want to get down to the brass tacks of everything, I'm really not surprised that this happened again.
Yeah, let's hold off on that conversation for just a minute. And I want to tee you up to introduce yourself a little more in depth here. But first, I want to talk about your background here. What is that? Is that your garden that we're looking at for people seeing the video?
Behind me is my pond. You can tell right there. It's a still picture of my pond. I use a green screen here, so I decided to put my corner of my backyard in there. This is a pond that I built. Actually, that pond is a what do I want to say? An evolution in design. And I've always liked water features in my backyard. And when I came and I bought this property, actually that pond looked like something out of the Flintstones. It was really, really bad. It didn't hold water. It was concrete. I think I busted out about 1,800 pounds of concrete and stuff that I moved actually 3 times into my truck.
Ridiculous.
It was ridiculous, and it left a big hole. So I just redesigned it. I put a little bit more depth in it and put a waterfall in it. As you can see, there's a waterfall in the background there. And I've got these 100-year-old, what do they call those, spider plants in the background that my old co-host Doug gave me. He brought them from I think it was Massachusetts or Connecticut, wherever he was living at the time, and they were probably 50 years old when he brought them here, and that was a long time ago. Yeah, so we got a bunch of legacy plants out there, and so I just love doing yards, stuff like this, my landscaping in my yard. When I bought my property, it was pretty well landscaped, but it just needed a lot of help with our own touches, and got me into thinking about. And I've always been a gardener, so I'm into gardening. I'm into homesteading. Right now, I am learning a whole lot. Right now, I've been in school for probably a good part of a year, doing some permaculture design courses. I'm also going to be entering a master gardener class.
Oh, nice.
In January here in my county, and haven't quite decided whether I was going to go full bore on that. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of community time. So whether or not I'm willing to put in that type of effort, depending on how I can style, how that's going to work out. I'm all for education, any kind of education I can get. Right now, like I said, I'm doing a lot of permaculture stuff. I'm studying about soil, because number one, soil is really the most important part of your garden. If you don't have good soil, you can't grow good food. Also, I've tinkered around with also all other kinds of stuff. I love to barbecue and cook, and I had a crazy idea about a barbecue brush that me and you discussed a couple of times.
Yeah.
And it's not dead, but it's on the shelf.
Well, sometimes you have to put things on the shelf and then bring them back off the shelf when it makes sense. But I'm glad you had that background, because I think that's a good introduction of you. And, just all the different things that you do have going on with the podcast, with homesteading.
I got so many things right now. It's hard to keep them apart. And one of the things that I've been having to do is kind of be accountable to myself. So I keep lists now. Every place I have a list that tells me, here's what I have to do here. Here's what I have to do here. And I just kind of mark them off as I go, because there's so many things involved in just taking care of. I have a small property, 6,500 square feet is my property. It's a full-time job. And plus with Plexus, some other things that I'm doing with the podcast. I've got 2 other podcasts that I'm doing. And like I said, it's a full-time job along with my 9 to 5.
Yeah, and it's crazy. As you know, I recently left the corporate world, was laid off, and I thought like, oh, I'm going to have all this time, and one thing that I did do and I plan to continue doing is that Pursuit of Freedom podcast. And originally I planned to do that on my, Finding Freedom feed, like 4 or 5 days a week. And I just have so much stuff filling up my time. It's just it's hard to do it, honestly. Hard to fit it into my schedule, because I don't have like a system to do it quickly. And whenever I start to do one, I plan on doing like 5-10 minutes, and I talk for like 25-30 minutes, and I got to edit it. And anyway, just that's the nature of podcasting, I guess. I think
once you start walking around your property and start walking around your businesses and all those things that you have to do during a day, it's almost impossible not to have lists.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have lists, I mean, I have a great memory, but all the time Sunday night I'm going like, oh, I forgot to do this, or I forgot to do that, or I'm so hurried. Like, unfortunately, like Rumble, I can only post Rumble, 24 hours ahead of time. Well, I didn't do it last night for my podcast, which is going to be on after this show here. And I had, I forgot to do that before I laid down last night to sleep. So first thing I did in the morning was I got that done, sent out my newsletter, and it's just one thing after the other. So it's a constant rumble of lists and scratching stuff off and adding stuff on, but it's fun. It's fun. It keeps me alive. It keeps me young. It keeps me active, and actually, it's quite relaxing. It sounds hurried, but it is quite relaxing.
Yeah, well, that's what life is all about, man. And I think that's why we get along so well, because we kind of have that same passion for just having different interests, different passions in life that really drive us forward. But I want to come back. We're going to hit the pause button on the homesteading, on the Bitcoin, come back to it. because we have to spend some time here talking about this second assassination attempt, just to kind of set the table for how I, heard about it. I said that I was watching football, and I saw it on Twitter, and then I immediately saw it, and I forget which, if it was CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, I forget who it was. It said like almost immediately, it was just gunfire near the golf course. It wasn't an actual assassination. It was just a bad area by the golf course. And I'm just like, well, how do they know that so quickly? Like, it doesn't seem right. Sure enough, like an hour later, like, oh yeah, it was another assassination attempt, and they got the guy. Just absolutely crazy that when it, like you just said, Bruce, I was not surprised at all. And after it happening one time, I'm almost like desensitized to it. Like someone trying to kill a former president. It's crazy.
It's amazing how desensitized we've gotten over the years because of social media. And I was saying before social media even started, it's not going to be long before we see somebody get killed, live on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, and this was back in the 90s, back when the internet started, and I knew that the internet was going to go the way it went. But as much as social media was starting then with, what was it, ICQ and places like that I used to hang out in, I knew that it wasn't going to be long with all the content that was coming out that eventually we were going to see. And I thought it would be on actual TV. But basically, TV or broadcast has fallen way behind what we can see on like places like X, Twitter and YouTube and things like that. And YouTube, not so much. TikTok now, but X is pretty much leading the way as far as breaking news and stuff like that. And that's basically where I get my content from to begin with. When I learned about it this morning, on X, and it was just from actually looking around and trying to figure out who was reading my latest blog. So I would go around to the different sites that I posted to, and then I found out, hey, gunshots were fired over at Mar-a-Lago or at the Trump National, wherever the golf course is that he owns, that he golfs at. And then I heard about that, and it kind of interested me. Busy throughout the day, so I went about my chores on the day, and then to find out that it wasn't an actual assassination attempt, and I'm not surprised, not at all. So
this is the guy. I'm going to pull up a tweet right here, and it looks kind of blurry to me. Hopefully everyone can see that on the screen. Not sure why it looks blurry.
Ryan Wesley Ruth.
Ryan Ruth. So he says in this tweet, and this is directed to Joe Biden, POTUS, your campaign should be called something like KADAF, Keep America Democratic and Free. Trump should be MASA, Make Americans Slave Again, Master. Democracy is on the ballot, and we cannot lose. We cannot afford to fail. The world is counting on us to show the way. This is crazy because this is the exact rhetoric coming from the Democrats, fear-mongering about Trump. And people who listen to my show know where I stand on Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Trump is super frustrating to me because he's not great. He's not, principled, but at least he's standing in the way of what the regime wants to do, which I think holds some value. Holds a lot of value, I think, actually. And I'm not, just so people don't get it twisted, I'm not coming out now and saying that I think this was like an inside job or anything. I know almost nothing about this. So for me to speculate on that now, I think would be pretty irresponsible. But I think just looking at this tweet here, you can see that this guy seems to be someone who was motivated by the rhetoric coming from the left.
Yep. In fact, Jimmy, I got a post up from Jimmy Dore, and I'll just read it verbatim from Jimmy Dore. It says, "This is Donald Trump's assassination attempt subject, Ryan Wesley Ruth, and he was interviewed by Newsweek Romania in 2022. He's a zealot for the Ukraine war because he's been fully propagandized by the corporate media to support war. He has zero idea what the war is actually about, and in his mind is very childlike, and it's a battle of good versus evil, just like the corporate news told him."
Mm-hmm.
And that's how propaganda works, and that's why I warned the Young Turks about pushing Russiagate, and it would lead to war and brainwash guys like this. And that's just about half of the post. But I listen to Jimmy Dore a lot, even though I don't agree with a lot of what with some of what he says. I mean, he's way progressive and way left, but he's basically one of the guys that is actually out there in the media that actually is pushes back on both sides. And I respect the guy for that, but he usually comes out with some pretty good stuff. He's got some journalists that are really good on his side, and like I said, I'm not surprised about this. Looking at it from 10,000 feet up, you could see it coming, only because of the fact of the rhetoric that keeps pounding on social media about Trump. I mean, we just witnessed a debate where Kamala Harris, 90% of the time was just repeating the rhetoric that had been debunked so many times, but yet the left media says, well, she's the darling now, and at least she's not Trump. I mean, and that's what scares me the most about this whole election, is because everybody that I know, because I live here in California, which is enemy territory for most conservatives.
Oh yeah.
And they're voting for Kamala because she's not Trump. So she can copy everything that Trump does, and they will vote for her because she's not Trump.
It's incredibly frustrating, because I mean, I'm not in California, so I don't have as many friends who are voting for Kamala as you do. but I do have a lot of friends who are smart people, who can think, reasonable people, people who I agree with on a lot of things, who are just never Trumpers, and they just can't support him no matter what. So they're voting for Kamala. It's crazy, because they say every 4 years it's the most important election of your lifetime, and I think there kind of is some truth to that. Because as the world kind of advances down this path, it does kind of make sense that it kind of compounds and magnifies every 4 years. And that's not to say, like, if Trump gets elected, everything is ponies and rainbows. It's not. But at least it might delay some of this destruction.
I hate to admit it, but I hated that phrase, but it is true. and we had a guest on our show, The Weather Report, not too far back, Shane Mecklin. He's a representative in Minnesota, and at that time I was on the fence about voting, and I did not vote in the primary election here in California, which was the first time I've never voted in my life. And he kind of convinced me to get back into the vote, but he says, you don't necessarily have to vote for Trump, but it's very important that if you go out there and vote, is to get your name off of that voter roll when you vote. It doesn't matter whether you vote for Mickey Mouse or Kamala or Trump or the libertarian guy or whatever. Get your address and your name off of those rolls by voting, because every vote that is not tabulated or not counted because nobody voted there is a chance for somebody else to vote, in that place. And that's happened to me before in 2000.
Really?
It was 2008. Yeah. 2008. I lost my vote. Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean? So what happened?
I went to the polls and somebody had already voted in my place.
What?
Yes. Somebody had stole my vote in my
So
precinct.
what do you do in that circumstance?
I did a provisional vote, and they let me fill out a new ballot and put it in, and then they promised me that they would take the other vote away and store it somewhere. So who knows, it probably ended up in a box in the middle of the Las Vegas desert. I have no idea, but they did, they let me put in a provisional ballot, and ever since then I've really been leery about voting, but I've been voting, except for this very last primary election. I did not vote, let alone knowing what happened with Biden and stuff. I probably should have voted, but in the same token, I am convinced I am going to vote in a national election. And right now, I won't divulge who I'm voting for, because it's not Kamala and it's not Trump. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm in Pennsylvania, which I'm pretty convinced that the election is going to come down to Pennsylvania pretty much entirely, who wins this state. So it would just be irresponsible of me to not vote. And I think at this point, it's irresponsible of me to not speak out and advocate for who I think people should be voting for. So that's one of the major reasons why I'm doing it and why I've been vocally supporting people to vote for Donald Trump, not necessarily supporting Donald Trump, if you can catch that nuance there.
I mean, I'll take that back about I'm not voting for Kamala Harris. If Donald Trump somehow secures my vote, because I've actually voted for Jill Stein the last couple of elections, and Jill, she's not a libertarian, but she's pretty liberty minded. She's got some things that I don't agree with, things like that. But in the same token, with everything that's happened with Trump and everything that's going on with them, he's actually really is my darling. I mean, the guy, he has survived an assassination attempt, got shot in the ear. I mean, one more centimeter, he could have had his head blown off. And so to me, he's a super kind of rock star. He's got that rock star status right now. However, there's so many people that hate him right now. It's just, it's unimaginable that the polls that are being done now and the rhetoric that's being said on the mainstream media is instead the M5, as Adam Curry would say, that there's so much conflicting data out there that you really don't know where the candidates stand right now. It's probably at a dead heat, but yeah, I'm going to agree with you that Pennsylvania is probably going to be the state that's going to choose who's going to be our president.
Yeah. And just to go back to the shooter a little bit here. I guess I can't blow this up, can I? There we go. Nope, that's not the one I want to blow up. So I guess I could go to each individual one. All right.
Nope.
Actually, that doesn't help much. But this is essentially what I will say is this guy's Twitter has been wiped already. You can't get to it anymore. The Twitter sleuths, the ex sleuths have done a great job going out and grabbing screenshots of what this guy posted. And a lot of it is he was actually over fighting in Ukraine. Like you said, Bruce, he looked at this like I think he actually referred to it as, a classical like fairy tale of good versus evil. The guy totally ate up everything that the international global regime has been feeding people. And if you look at the picture of him, I mean, just look at his eyes. Just look at that guy. He's a psychopath. I mean, it doesn't take a doctor to figure that out. He's either crazy just already, which that's a shame. I feel bad for him. Or he's on some kind of pharmaceuticals, which in that case, I also feel bad for him because his brain's been hijacked in some way from him. Yeah. But it's just insane that we've got to this point. And the last I checked, Joe Biden still hadn't tweeted or responded to Trump being shot. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I'm sure he doesn't know. Kamala Harris, we like laugh about it, like, oh yeah, of course the current president has no idea what's happening. Why should the president have any idea what's happening? Kamala Harris and Tim Walz basically said violence is not the answer, and I'm sure the next tweet will be, we need to ban AR-15s.
Oh yeah. That's an AK. This was an AK-47. They said it was an AR style.
Well,
rifle,
then they'll just say assault weapons. We got to get all the assault weapons off the street.
But this is what happens when you are just a headline reader. And to me, that is one of the ones that that if you go to my Facebook page, it's my most political page that I do. I'm also on Nostr, but I often. In fact, in this past probably 6 months, I have been more political than I ever have been. And it's for a reason. I mean, me and Ken, my co-host, decided that we were just going to steer this podcast until November as political as we can. And in fact, the show that I have to do today after this podcast, we're taking a political holiday. We'll see how long that lasts.
What a time to pick to do a political holiday.
We're going to try, but we'll see how it lasts. I got a feeling that Ken is the one that's going to break the mold first. But yeah, we are so just frustrated with the uneducated voters out there that just want to read headlines only, read the first paragraph, and then just leave it at that without getting into until the milk, the meat and potatoes of just looking and doing your research on your own and finding sources that are truthful. And I think that's what lacks a lot in people's minds, and I rail against the Democrats, I rail against the Republicans, but I'm not railing against the people. I'm not railing against the voters. I'm actually railing against the actual Republicans and the Democrats, the people that are in the House and the Senate and occupying both the Supreme Court and the White House. But I do rail on voters a lot, and I just keep railing. I just keep pounding into people's head. Get educated about all of this. And I mean, really, in the national election, it's important that we know who they are, but basically get down to your city level and your town level and find out who those people are that are on your school board and on your city councils and things like that. Those are the most important people, because those are the stepping stones that take you to Washington, D.C. And you can either stop people or encourage people to keep going on their political futures, as long as you understand who is in your city councils and your school boards, because those are the most important.
Yeah, your city councils, your school boards, your mayor, your commissioners, whatever structure your municipality or township has, or city, those people should be like the best and brightest people in that area. They should be leaders in business. They should be leaders in medicine. They should be people who have accomplished major things.
Yeah, you would hope so.
Yeah, you would hope so. That's not the case. Unfortunately, that's not the case at all in most cities. In most cities, it's like the people who have accomplished the absolute least have ascended those positions.
Yeah. I missed the opportunity, and I could have ran for the school board this year because there was 3 openings in the school board that are running uncontested. So
really,
I should have. I missed the deadline on it, but believe me, next year I'm probably going to be hot on it.
So is your school board where you are? Is it supposedly like nonpartisan?
It is a nonpartisan. In fact, you don't have to. You don't have to claim your affiliation. Whenever I come across any of the city council members who roll their eyes most of the time, but I do frequent very many establishments that they do, and actually. I went and I looked at the sample ballot this week, just to see who's running in my area, and I'm going to go be talking to them personally just to find out where they're at, and I'll ask them the obvious questions. Are you conservative? Are you liberal? What are you? And because I need to know that. And then I'll ask the other pertinent questions like taxes and where's my money going and why are we doing this and why are we doing that? How they support it. So if you get into that situation, I mean, you really need to, because there's so many city council people, mayors, school board people that you don't even know. They just end up on the ballot, and you go, okay, you do the boom, and you pick them, just like municipal court judges and stuff like that. You got to know who you're voting for. I mean, I really do. I really, really believe in that, and most people don't.
Yeah, and I mean, I've done a major shift on that within the past, even just like 2 years here. I used to really encourage people not to vote at all, and especially don't worry about your local elections. Now I've totally flipped. Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. And I think a lot of that is just simply, having a daughter, coming up in this system, in this community, and understanding that, it's important to participate. And also from the perspective of, even local police. Like when I was a young libertarian, I would be very anti-police and say, we shouldn't give the police the time of day. And really, that's just stupid. You should, be active in your community, be a face, hopefully your local police, know who you are for a couple of reasons. One reason, if, the shit does hit the fan and things go sideways, you want them to look to you as someone who is, a trusted person who, that can at least help them in some way, or is not going to, backstab if stuff goes crazy. But I think that's where a lot of libertarians kind of miss it. Yes, you do want to hold your police accountable. I mean, we don't want police doing no-knock raids and all these kind of things, but there's nothing wrong with treating police with respect as long as they are being respectful.
Exactly.
Just being an asshole and a jerk and treating police like trash doesn't help anything. It just
No.
makes your life more difficult.
No, they're more powerful than you. So
Yeah.
they got bigger guns and stuff, but I mean,
Exactly.
and then being in California is a different animal than being in Pennsylvania, I'm sure. But yeah, I just, like I said, I compliment Shane Mecklin and Walter Hudson of Minnesota to actually put the fire under my butt and get me back to the voting block again. So thank you guys again, and yeah, so that's where I'm at. That's the whole thing.
Well, let's pivot to the weather report. And before we talk about your current podcast, the Weather Report, with the crew you have there, which I love, which I've been on twice now. Can't wait to come back on the show later. Not later tonight, unfortunately, but down the road. Yes. So let's talk about the original Weathered Soul and how you first started podcasting. So tell us about that journey.
Jason Stapleton. I need
point
to say
the finger at Jason.
I need to say no more than Jason Stapleton. I started, actually, it started way before that. I was way involved in my church at the time, and I got the opportunity to be up in front of teenagers in the teenage ministry, and I was entrusted to actually, speak the word. And I found myself enjoying being able to speak in front of people. And it was very rewarding to be able to, lead somebody into the path of Christianity, because I'm a Christian. And it was really cool. In between that time of being kind of a lay person there, I moved from San Jose to Gilroy, and in that time I had a commute finally, more than a 10-minute commute to work. So I had almost an hour to work. So I'm looking for something to listen to. I was listening to iHeartRadio at the time, and I think at the time I was listening to Rush Limbaugh or somebody like that. But Jason Stapleton's radio program or his advertisement would keep coming on. I'm going like, okay, well let's.
So he was advertising on Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, he was advertising on iHeartRadio. Is what he was doing.
Yeah, because when he came in, he had some money to throw around. So
he had some money to throw around. So he did, and I ended up giving him a try, and lo and behold, I became a large L libertarian at that time, because that's what he was touting it. And so I started listening to him, and I'm going like, yeah, you know what? A lot of things that he says makes a lot of sense. And at the time that I moved here to Gilroy, I had also met Doug. And Doug is I can't remember what they used to call him, a hyper Republican and something Democrat. I can't remember what his phrase was on that, but we got along great. And I had this inkling that I really wanted to start a podcast. So we started the Weathered Soul podcast, and it ran for about 2.5 years. We had about 100 different episodes and things like that. At the time, I was also doing the morning drive, and because something just to keep me in practice on speaking. And we had a good run. I mean, we it was a no guest type of podcast. I think we had maybe a couple of guests within the 100 shows that we did, but mostly it was deconstructing the news of the day, arguing each other, because he was probably more of a liberal Republican or liberal, what do I want to call that, middle of the road person, independent, than I was more of a conservative middle of the road person.
Okay.
And
it would be interesting to hear Doug's views on the current election. That's
yeah. As a matter of fact, I reached out to him. He didn't reach out back to me today to see if he was going to join us tonight, but we'll see what happens. It would be nice for him to show up, but I do plan on having him to come back just to come back and make a cameo appearance on the podcast. But it was really fun to do, and I don't regret a minute of it. It ran its course. We ran for 2.5 years, and it just kind of got repetitive after that. So we decided to shutter it after a while, and then I kind of went solo for a little bit, and that just kind of dumped because I'm not really a good solo podcast guy. And so I had been so fast forwarding, going to the Weather Report. I had been in Jason's numerous different groups that he's had, the Nomad Network being one of them, and that's where I met Ken and Jason and Harkos, and we've known each other for, I think, going on 4, maybe 5 years now, a little longer than me and you have known each other. And we've conversed back and forth. Everybody's had their little podcast. Ken was in radio. Jason was always trying to do his horrible designs, and Harkos was always in hip hop. Mm-hmm. So there's 4 generations there, which I'm the oldest now, which is really weird because I've never been the oldest in anything. So I'm 64. Ken's like 55. Jason's in his 40s, and Harkos is in his 30s. So there's a wide range of different lifestyles there. And we decided to do a podcast called The Weather Report. And
yeah. I think the speaking to the 4 generations, I think it's really interesting just hearing you guys making fun of each other, ripping each other. And it really does have, I mean, it's natural. It's not like it's forced at all. Yeah, it is an enjoyable listen. And also, I mean, you're 4 guys who you all have your own unique ventures. You have your own unique, businesses or side hustles or whatever that are driving you. So you're bringing like that perspective to the table as well. It reminds me in a way, not exactly, I mean, it's very different, but in a way, it reminds me of a version of what we used to do at Lions of Liberty, libertarians and living rooms drinking liquor.
Yeah.
It's not as crazy as that, but you do get like sort of that round table type vibe, which I think is really cool. More like freewheeling. You do plan some stuff and, talk about different topics and bring guests on, but there is that element of, just freewheeling, I guess, which I really like in podcasting.
Yeah. And that's why we started The Weathered View, which is my commute podcast, which I started out again as the morning drive. And then we decided being The Weathered View. And this is where we get more candid, we get more raw, we get more opinionated and in your face with stuff. And it runs, 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. on X in the morning. It's a space, so anybody can join in. And if you want to speak or something, all you have to do is request. But we get a little bit more raw there, a little bit more like libertarians drinking liquor. it's more of a podcast like that. It runs pretty good, and it's just it's a vehicle to put content out there, and that's the thing. Yeah, the more content you put out there, the more you get recognized, and hopefully, someday the spark will hit the fire, and the flame will start burning, and we can go forward. So right now we're growing, but not as fast as anybody would like to. But like I said, we're a fledgling podcast. We like to deconstruct stuff. We like to do stuff that lots of people do. I mean, there's millions of podcasts out there. I mean, just as well as I know how hard it is to keep an audience interested in your content. So we keep trying to at least change it up a bit here and there. Tonight, like I said, is a political free podcast, however long that lasts. But we like to bring on entrepreneurs. We like to bring on musical artists. We like to do things about hot rods. We like to do things about homesteading, survival, you name it. We'll talk about it. And we like to bring on guests. And lately, we've just been bringing on some political guests that basically are in Minnesota and Wisconsin. So that's where we're at with that.
Yeah, Minnesota, Wisconsin, because that's where Ken and Jason are.
Ken
is in that area too, right?
Yeah, Ken is our political guy. He was the one. He actually worked with Michelle Bachmann during her drive for the presidency and whatever she was working for. So he's really, really involved in politics. So he's the one that gets us to Shane Mecklins, the Walter Hudsons, the Lisa Monets, and people like that to come on the podcast. My forte is getting people like my neighbor Kevin Pfeiffer, who's a musical guy, and Harkos is really going to like that one. People that are involved in gardening and things like that, and then like I said, we have a wide range of people that come onto the podcast. Exactly like you too, and just to be able to talk about diverse things. And
I'm glad you brought up music, because that's another thing I didn't even talk about with you. That's a huge part of your life, also.
It is.
Are you still playing live gigs?
I practice a lot. Eddie has since gone solo with the Weathered Soul. He is the Weathered Soul now. But
is there a trademark on that name, or
there is not a trademark on that name. That name is used by a lot of people. In fact, he spells it different than we. And he's the actual one that came up with the term Weathered Soul, and then I stole it from him, and then I went forward on it with my brand name, and then the product which is the podcast and some of the products that are coming up. But yeah, so music is still really, really important to me. I love to play it. I'm a songwriter, so I've got lots of stuff that are published and copyrighted, and hopefully someday somebody might flick it out of the pen and I'm going to be a millionaire. But
you need to get a TikTok dance to one of your songs. That's all you're one TikTok dance away from blowing up.
I am something outrageous away from being a superstar.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when you were talking about podcasting and trying to grow a following, and it's so darn competitive in podcasting now because there's so many podcasts, and trying to grow a huge, massive podcast is almost impossible, just because of the competition and people. I mean, I try to listen to a bunch of different podcasts, but it's just too much. Like I don't have time to listen to podcasts all day. I have to get stuff done. But I think at the end of the day, like podcasting, it's like you said, it's about producing that content, and it's also about networking. It's about who's it going to connect you with. Somebody could listen to your podcast, The Weather Report, who, maybe they have some connection that can help you get your barbecue brush off the ground.
Right.
You never know, like what kind of things can, or maybe something totally that's not even in your in your windshield, in your view right now, could come out of the blue, or just like you and I, how we came together on health with Plexus. I think in large part because of you listening to this show. So it's not really like, for me, it's not trying to. In the old days of Lions of Liberty, we were trying to blow things up and get as big as we could. Now I'm just focused on, I just want to talk to people who, it's kind of weird to say it like this, I just want to talk to people who want to listen to what I'm talking about. Like I'm not trying to cast this wide net, and I just want a certain type of person. If that's not you, listen to something else. I really don't care.
Right. And I have my favorite people that I listen to every day. I listen to Adam Curry. I listen to Jack Spirko. I listen to you, of course, John Odermatt and Brian. I do have other people that I download. Jimmy Dore is one of them. I try to catch his show every once in a while. Harkos has his own podcast. It's kind of out of my realm, but I get a download for him, so he gets a credit for the download.
Yeah, hey, that's a good friend. That's a good friend.
Yeah, and that's why I say, you don't have to listen to my podcast, but damn it, download it. Give me some
download
credit,
it and listen to the first commercial. That's all I ask.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the biggest thing out there is just unless you're going to go out and you're going to be a spectacle of yourself, you're not going to get that great big notoriety and be able to kiss the ring like a lot of people have done. I'm not looking to kiss the ring, but I am looking to gain more listeners, so we can get a little bit more influential out there and get some other guests on. I mean, it would be nice to have the Jack Spirkos. It would be nice to have anybody else, Jimmy Dores and stuff like that, and or be able to go on those shows. I mean, you've been on some bigger shows, and we've had some bigger names on ours, but that's the thing. It's just to keep going and keep trying and keep asking. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that you have to ask. You're going to get a lot of no's, but you'd be surprised how many yeses you get. And when we got Shane Mecklin on from the representatives of Minnesota, I was shocked, and that just worked out really well for us. And I was nervous as hell.
Yeah, well, that's good to be nervous. Yeah. The biggest show I was ever on, the episode never aired. That's something for offline. Maybe I'll tell you about another time. I'm not going to share that on this podcast, but I did want to talk about Bitcoin a little bit, because that's one thing you post about, one of the things you post about pretty frequently. I know you're passionate about it. I know you've had Shane Hazel
Yep.
on your podcast a few times. He's been on mine as well. How do you feel about Bitcoin right now? I mean, is
Right
it something
now,
you're still as passionate about?
we are so lateral in Bitcoin right now. We are stuck in a mode that goes from could be in the mid 50s to the mid 60s, and it's been that way for months. The what do they call the halving just happened, and they were supposed to be speculating that this thing was supposed to be at $100,000 and this and that. But beyond that, what I basically do is that I need to diversify. I mean, my portfolio is pretty extensive. I do a 401k, I do a Roth IRA, I do Bitcoin, I do gold, I do silver, I do, investments in my education, my house, and all kinds of things. And all that diversification just gives you stuff to fall back on when we have times that are going to be hard. We're going to have these market flows that are going to be up sometimes and down sometimes. Bitcoin happens to be one of those vehicles I believe in that I think is a future. And the Bitcoin that I'm buying now is not actually for me. It's actually for my daughter. I'm going to be around for maybe, hopefully another 25 years. But in 25 years, I think that that Bitcoin will probably be around more than a lot of the crypto assets that are going around now. And the one thing about Bitcoin that I'm really turned on about, and I get speculation from my co-hosts about this is a psyop, it's a scam, it's a government thing. No, it really isn't. If you really sit down and you read the white paper and you read the information about it, and I got a lot of friends like Shane Hazel and Alex Stancic over at Swan Bitcoin, they really educate you a lot on that. Corey Clipson is another one that I listen to, and I really put a lot of stock in their education about Bitcoin. And I go out and I do my own research also. So I really think that it's a great asset to get into. Is it something that I would dump all my money into? No, nothing I would dump all my money into, but it is something that I would dump, a good percentage of amount of my portfolio in, and that's where I stand with it. You have to be diversified because you never know what's going to go belly up next.
Yeah, I think where I am at with Bitcoin, I think people get in. I'll say it this way: the thing that, because I am a Bitcoin supporter, I do own Bitcoin, but the one thing that kind of grinds my gears about, especially like Bitcoin maximalists, like people who will only invest in Bitcoin, and all they talk about is the price of Bitcoin going up and it's going to get to 1 million, and well, we got to use it. I mean, we got to use Bitcoin, right? Like it's not just going to go to 1 million and like just no one's going to use it.
Yeah.
Like, so that's the thing that I'm looking for is like, and there's a couple different things where I do use Bitcoin like once or twice a month on different subscriptions or purchases or whatever, which I think is good. I think if you're someone who supports Bitcoin, you should be actively looking for ways to transact in it. How do you feel about that?
And that's very important. And there's ways that you can actually use Bitcoin to buy stuff and actually use fiat to buy Bitcoin and send Bitcoin to the person that you're buying stuff from. You don't necessarily need to use Bitcoin to buy something with Bitcoin. Strike is one of the apps that I use to do that. And but there is an adoption that's going on in South America and in some other countries that have adopted Bitcoin as a legal tender currency. And I think that's where it starts. El Salvador, places like that down in the South America is really, really heavy into Bitcoin. It's very encouraging that they've done that. And of course, Elizabeth Warren and some of the Democrats are really just staunch against it because, of course, like what was it? I can't remember his name. He's in prison.
Ross Ulbricht.
Yeah, Ross Ulbricht and Silk Road. I mean, we're really traveling down a road like that, and it scares me. I mean, it's really scary to be able to be in an asset that is kind of scary like that. But the fact that you can't call up the CEO of Bitcoin or customer service for Bitcoin and get a hold of them and find out what's going on with Bitcoin, it's really kind of great about that, because basically what it does is it exemplifies the freedom that you need to have and the freedom that you need to be comfortable with to be able to be with Bitcoin, because it is you have to be responsible for your own keys, you have to be responsible for your own phrases, you have to be your own bank with this thing. And it's very, very, it's like owning guns. I mean, you really have to be responsible with it. You really have to know where things are. You really have to, know your keys. You have to know that combination, all those things. And I think it's one of the things that's going to catch on later on in life, because fiat's going to crash. I mean, basically, that monetary system is going to collapse. It can't be that way forever. No currency has ever been that way forever. So I'm looking at Bitcoin as being that next road.
Yeah, it's definitely a piece of the future for sure.
Yeah.
So Bruce, we are out of time because you have your podcast coming up after this, so
yeah.
Can't go any longer. But before I do let you go, plug that podcast, plug anything else that you got going on.
Yeah, well, you can go to weathersoul.com to go and get my newsletter. I've actually just started blogging. I've found the great thing about blogging through a website. So I have a couple of blogs up, and I do that often. So if you go to weathersoul.com, I'll give you the link because it's spelt in a certain way. So if you want to get to go there, you'll have to click the link to go there. You can listen to the weather review, the weather report on Sunday nights on YouTube and on Rumble. And that usually goes to 7:00 Pacific time. We're either doing a live or we're doing some extra content. Either way it goes, you're welcome to go there. And then also on X Spaces every morning, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to about 6:45, about time I get to work. And then you get all of us together, being who we are on the morning drive and talking about the news of the night and things like that. So that's what we usually do. But yeah, thank you for having me on the podcast, man. I really, really enjoyed our conversation, and looking forward to coming back if you'd like me to.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Bruce. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely.
See you. All right. That is a wrap for my interview with Bruce Magee. Definitely check out his show, The Weather Report, everything else he talks about. I will link to everything on the show notes page at lionsofliberty.com. One more thing I will say, if you like this show, if you like the show that Brian does, if you like our show Meme Wars, then you're probably going to want to check out our bonus content that we have, which you can only access by joining the Lions of Liberty Pride. You can do so by going to patreon.com or locals and just searching Lions of Liberty, and you can join it whatever level that you feel is appropriate for you for different access, different merchandise, things like that. So we'd love to have you in the Lions of Liberty Pride. And with that being said, I will see you all next week. In the meantime, always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.